introduced. You've got myself, Tom, for this Healthy Minds, Better Lives, and we've got Hayley with us as well.
Hello.
And we've got Joe with us. Hello, Joe.
Hello, both.
Joe, a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm just going to remind people that may have just tuned in a little bit late. After 10 o'clock, we're going to be talking about the importance of taking a break. And Hayley, forgive me if or correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking any length break. It doesn't have to be I'm going away for 3 months. It could be as small as I'm taking a break. I'm going for a walk for an hour. Both have got valid aspects to them.
Yeah, and I think we need to learn to give ourselves permission to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see the impact on the way that you take a break.
Yes, and also Hayley was saying her birthday falls on National Chocolate Day, which perfectly summarises Hayley. And also, for those that may have missed it, it's Hayley's 2-year anniversary on Healthy Minds, Better Lives. Woohoo! So fantastic to have had you part of this team for so long, and chocolate being Hayley's birthday national day. But we want to know, not necessarily the day that falls on your birthday, although I'm intrigued to find out what mine is, but also what national day should perfectly summarizes you as a person. So what would be your national day if you could choose it for your birthday? Joe, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about that, but thank you so much for joining us here on Healthy Minds, Better Lives. We're talking NHS 111 option 2, but before we deep dive into that, do you mind introducing yourself and what your role is and where you work and what is it that you do?
Yeah, no problem at all. So my name is Joe Thomas. I am a mental health nurse by background. I'm currently the clinical lead for the 111 Press 2 service in Hywel Dda. And previous to that, I worked sort of as a community nurse. I've worked in the acute wards for mental health. And I've also worked in sort of low-level psychological interventions as well. So I've got a fair bit of experience behind me in mental health. And currently, I sort of oversee the management of the service in 111.
Oh, brilliant. Now, for those that might not be familiar with 111, in fact, there's only this morning on the breakfast show with Folly Farmers talking about this new rollout, about getting people engaging with the right service at the right time, so you're seen by the right people. For those that might not know, what is 111? And then give us the overview of what option 2 is.
No problem at all. So 111 is the NHS's sort of telephone support and helpline. The general line's been around for a fair while. It replaced the old NHS Direct. I don't know exactly when that was, but I think probably we're looking at about 15 years or so. And it's there for sort of support and advice for anyone that's struggling with their physical health, if they've got any sort of physical ailments or queries about medication and those sorts of things. Anyone can pick up the phone, dial 111 and get through to someone that's able to give them that advice. So option 2 is a little bit different and a little bit the same. We offer the same sort of support, but specifically for mental health. And that in all its very many forms.
And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Like physical health, and this is the age-old argument of working in the health sector, is that you've got your physical health and you've got your mental health. Physical health, we've got so many bones in our body, we've got so many organs. Mental health is pretty much just as varied, and yet it's usually all bundled together. And now it's all bundled under option 2 when you ring up. Through your experience then, Joe, you've been doing this a long time. Do you think that there's a better understanding now of I'm not going to say a perfect understanding, but a better understanding as to mental health and its impacts on different people?
Yeah, I'd say there definitely is a much better understanding on the whole. I think there's been a lot of sort of campaign work that's gone on the last 10, 15 years or so. There's been a lot of increase in awareness of mental health, and people are just more able to talk about how they're feeling, which I think has gone a long way towards eliminating some of that stigma that was there historically.
Yeah. Hayley, is that your experience?
I'm going to say no. I think we're better. I think we've still got a long way to go. I think we are doing, we are opening conversations, definitely. I think we're making it easier for people to come forward and speak about their mental health, but I think we've still got quite a few strides to go before everybody's comfortable talking about it, and we can kind of have very open conversations with everybody.
That's what I love about the potential for option 2, is that whereas before it was kind of like, oh, I'm feeling low, I need to go to my doctor. There's all these big hurdles. I need to walk through a door. I need to talk to a receptionist. I need to do this. I need to walk into a local charity. You need to kind of feel like you physically did something. Whereas option 2, we near enough all of us have got something in our hand, and for this ease of just dialing 4 digits, you're through to someone. That ease of access, Joe, must be an incredible option for people to have.
Yeah, and the feedback we've had since the service has been up and running has been absolutely phenomenal, really. We get sort of various calls from various different sort of backgrounds, people from all walks of life. People might be experiencing sort of low mood for the first time. They'll give us a ring, have a chat. We'll be able to point them in the direction of sort of our colleagues in Mind, or sort of Adveria, that used to be called Havel, sort of the charity organisations that can support people with mental health. And equally, we've had calls from people that are experiencing sort of what we'd call serious mental illness. So things like your bipolar or schizophrenia, and they can ring up to have a chat with one of the practitioners on the line and get a referral into sort of community services, which are a bit more sort of robust and more rigid in sort of their approach to how they deal with sort of serious mental health conditions.
Yeah, we'll look at that signposting in just a moment. So, if people were to ring up 111 option 2, what's the process that then happens whilst they're on the phone? Let's try and dispel what information they're
Yeah,
going
of
to have to
course.
give over.
No problem at all. So when someone first rings up, it will sort of put you into our call system. So normally a sort of we've got a bit of a target that we keep to under 2 minutes to answer calls. Most of our calls are answered within less than 2 minutes. So there's not a massive wait most of the time to get through to someone on the other end. When someone picks up the phone, it is a mental health practitioner rather than a call handler. So it's someone that's trained to sort of help people with their mental health problems, that can offer that support and advice and those interventions on the phone. First thing that they'll do is they'll sort of introduce themselves, explain that you've come through to the mental health line. You'd be surprised how many people think they've pressed for dental health, not mental health. And yeah, first thing we'll do is take some sort of demographic information, so sort of name, where you live, what your contact number is, in case we need to give you a ring back because we get disconnected for any reason. We'll ask for a sort of brief outline of what's going on for you at the moment. And then from there, it's pretty much led by sort of the person that's calling. So if someone's calling up to discuss sort of the low mood or those sorts of things, the practitioner will sort of take their line of questioning from that. So it might be, what's been going on for you, what's sort of led to you calling this evening, how long have you been feeling like this. And similarly, if someone were to call with something a bit different, so sort of hearing voices, I imagine that the sort of the questioning would be very similar, but it would be a slightly different track of questioning. So rather than just how long has this been going on for you and those sorts of things, it might be a case of, have you got a diagnosis? Have you had this before? Those sorts of questions.
Amazing. Hayley, what are your first thoughts on hearing what comes through when you push that number?
I think it is great that it's easy to access. There's not a long waiting list, because I know, or waiting time, I should say. I know that, going into hospital, if you were looking to get some support there, you can wait anything up to 10, 12 hours. I know family members have walked out when they've been waiting and that. So being able to access somebody immediately or within a couple of minutes is amazing for people who are often, I'm ready now, isn't it? You find that when they're ready, they need it there and then, and any kind of wait can put them off. So that is amazing for people. And I actually know I'll take this and pass it on to my clients as well, because I think it's a fantastic option to have if you're supporting somebody as well, to be able to ring up and say, I'm supporting somebody, they're not in the right fit state to speak to you. Can I speak to you? If that's an option, that's wonderful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Hayley, clarify that for this, Joe, because it's not necessarily just for people experiencing symptoms.
No, not at all. We get sort of a range of calls from sort of other professionals, but equally from we could sort of offer signposting advice for not just the person that's experiencing the distress, but the carer as well. So there's lots of organisations out there that support people that care for individuals with mental health problems specifically, and on a wider scale, sort of other physical health problems. And there's lots of services that we can link you up with that a lot of people don't know about just because they've never asked.
And
Yeah.
that's probably, Hayley, what you found in your experience as well, is that there is actually a wealth of options available there to support you. But if it's your first time in that world, you don't know they exist.
No, and do you know the thing? And I've said this about different counties across Wales. We're not very good at gathering information on the services available in the area, and we need to get better at that. So I've heard of option 2, probably in the last year, I would have thought, but not really spoken to anybody about it. So it's good to have this information, but we need it disseminated throughout our communities. We need to have, NHS 111, I've used it for years. I used the one before the NHS Direct as well. I've used them all with the kids. But if a new service, we need it out there. We need the information out there, and with lots of services that are available. I've worked with Adferiad, and I work now with Times Change Wales, and they're part of Adferiad and Mind actually. But again, we're still spreading the word about them. So we need to get better at telling people this is available for everybody, for carers, because I think that's invaluable for people who are struggling to care for somebody. And you feel lost because you often don't think there's support out there for you as a carer.
Yeah, and well, that we've talked about carers on this show before, and particularly unpaid carers, people that don't know that they're carers, taking on all that stress and that burden of having to change their life. Joe, back to those call handlers. You said that it's not a handler, it's not a middle person that you get through to. It's a mental health practitioner. What kind of experience and what kind of training are they given before they take the calls?
Yeah, so it depends really on what sort of practitioner you get through to. So we've got a mixture of skills within the team. So we've got I think it's 7 other people from similar backgrounds to me, sort of mental health nursing. They've worked in the community teams, they've worked in the crisis teams, and those sorts of areas. And they've got a wealth of that more formal registrant background, nursing background almost. Rachel, that was due to be with me tonight, but has unfortunately had some technical difficulties. She's from a mental health social work background, so she's still a registrant, but's got a slightly different perspective on things. And then we've got our wellbeing pracs, who most people, when they first ring into the service, will get through to. They haven't generally got a professional registration, but they have got an absolute wealth of experience of supporting people with mental health problems. So it may be that they've worked as mental health support workers for many years. We've got people that have worked as counsellors, people that have worked as psychologists or assistant psychologists. We've got a couple of staff that have worked as community support workers. So we've got one that had worked for the crisis team. We've got one that worked for the crisis team and then went to work for the drug and alcohol services. So we've got quite a wide range of different backgrounds and experience within the team.
Yeah. One quick thought about the people that are ringing up. Is there any age limits? Is there like a minimum or a maximum age? What is there for? What are the guidance?
So we are completely age blind. So we will speak to anyone from birth right the way through to old age. So I think the youngest we've had call into us is about 6 or 7, and I think the oldest that I know from memory is about 96.
Oh,
So
wow.
a real range and everything in between.
Yeah. And then you've got these practitioners that take the call. Thank you for answering that. These practitioners that take the call, I imagine it's not necessarily potluck, but it's who's available at that given time. And you might have someone that perfectly meets your needs for that moment and that call. What if there's someone else who would be better placed? I imagine that 111 option 2, it's very much here's the call now, and then we signpost. There's no kind of follow up from option 2. Is there? There's the person that you're dealing with, and then they then signpost you for the next step.
So by and large, yes, that is how we work. I think the sort of exception to the rule there is if we get people that are phoning up very, very distressed, needing that more urgent support. If they get through to one of our sort of junior practitioners, as it were, the sort of wellbeing practice, what we will do is we will ask for one of the senior practitioners, one of our registrants, to give someone a call back at the end of that call. So it can be anywhere up to 4 hours, but it's generally much, much quicker than that. And that's just to sort of reassess how things are now, make sure that all the needs are being met, and to make sure that any sort of outcomes from the initial call were appropriate and that the right support's been given. just to sort of tie everything up a bit in a fairly pleasant manner, as
Yeah.
pleasant as it can be when you're experiencing mental distress.
Yeah. Now, 111 without the option two, there's always that disclaimer that if you're in kind of life-endangering pain or you've got chest pains and things along those lines, it's dial 999. Is there ever a point? At what point would you say just get emergency services? At what stage? Is that something that comes up as well?
So it is something that we've had occasionally where we've needed to immediately call for sort of a 999 response, and that's usually if someone sort of significantly harmed themselves in any way, or perhaps taken sort of a lot of medication that they shouldn't have, and then we might need to involve sort of emergency services straight away, and that's more for preserving their safety and making sure that they're getting that immediate support that's needed. On the whole, one of the things that we were set up to do was try and avoid mental health attendances at sort of A&E departments, and sort of help reduce the sort of pressure of mental health on police services, and equally on GPs services as well. So where possible, we do try and avoid involving those sort of blue lights. It's more distressing for people when they're experiencing mental health crisis, and if we can get some community support that's more appropriate and in a timely manner, we will always try and do that first.
Yeah. What's the stance on confidentiality if someone rings up and they think, oh, it's going to be broadcast or my family's going to find out, and so it's not worth it, as much as they might know that long term it's beneficial to open up? What's the stance of NHS, of the 111 option 2 at that stage?
So it's the same as any sort of other health environment. So we are completely bound by confidentiality. So unless sort of you were to give consent for your information to be shared with other sort of services, we wouldn't be sharing that information. The only people that would routinely be able to see those notes are the individual's GP, just because we like to keep the GP informed in case there's any follow-up care needed. We have got an option if people don't want the GP to be made aware, we can stop that from happening as well. But we absolutely wouldn't be sort of broadcasting it to people's family and friends, unless the one disclaimer I've got there is unless there was sort of a risk to those people, and then it would probably be sort of a more formal process, but that would be sort of discussed with each person on a case by case basis.
Yeah. And if it got to that emergency stage as well, then of course the police have got to follow their remit as well and things like that. But as a starting point, confidence is kept, and so it's between you and whoever's on the phone with you at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the last thing we would want is to sort of break down those barriers for people, and sort of limit their trust in the service.
Yeah. You've gone through some examples there of when I said, when there's an emergency and what goes on. What other examples have you got of? I'm gonna do this for those on the camera with inverted commas, but a typical call, because I know that one doesn't exist, and I imagine that for a lot of people, going back to what Hayley said earlier, there's something really nice about that first time that you tell someone, even if they're a stranger, that's all they might have needed, was just to get it off their shoulders, to be listened, to be respected, and given an next action. It's like, oh, actually, the world isn't falling down. And what have been your experiences? What examples can you share with us here this evening?
So I think it's quite interesting that you said the standard call, or I can't remember the exact term you used, but yeah, we absolutely haven't got a typical call. Everyone's so unique and individual. But yeah, I mean, we get quite a lot of calls from people that have never accessed any support before, and a lot of the time they're sort of not aware of the support that is available, or unfortunately they might have heard negative things about services through other people that may have tried to access support and hit barriers. But one of the things that we have seen quite a lot is people are able to ring into us. We'll go through our sort of triage, find out what it is that's going on for them, identify the most appropriate support for them at the end of that, and we can send them on to pretty much any service that's NHS commissioned or otherwise, for that support. So I think a good example really is someone that has sort of been experiencing a bit of low mood. First time they've ever sort of had any issues with their mood, they've given us a ring. And this is something that happens pretty much most days. So I'm probably drawing from a couple of different calls when I think about this one. But yeah, they sort of never had any significant issues with their mental health before. They've been experiencing low moods because of perhaps a relationship breakdown, and not entirely sure what to do with themselves after that, feeling a bit low, not able to get motivated, struggling to get out of the house to go to work. As a result, they may have been laid off. And sort of after a conversation with us, we're able to get them in touch with the likes of Mind, who do things like supported self-help, so they can get the access that sort of structured sort of psychological support through Mind, without having to get involved with more formal services. And equally, we can get them in touch then with the likes of Citizens Advice, who can support with the sort of benefits advice, if they've been made unemployed, or can support with any financial queries that they may have if they've had to reduce their hours and those sorts of things. So that's one example, really. And I think the other end of the spectrum then is we get someone that might ring us that's extremely distressed. They may be talking about harming themselves, or even in some cases taking their own life. And through a sort of conversation and assessment and brief intervention through ourselves on the phone, we can help to reduce those levels of distress, perhaps stop them sort of acting on those thoughts in the moment, and get them some appropriate support for the next day. And that may be from the community mental health team, it might be from sort of the crisis teams, if that's felt to be needed. And equally for younger people, we can get them in touch with, we've got a new service in Carmarthen, for people under 18, that they can go and they can be assessed there in a setting that's more child friendly than sitting in A&E for 4 hours and waiting to be seen in a very busy department.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget that if you're someone that's had relatively stable mental health, then all of a sudden your world's rocked, that actually it's really overwhelming to have lost all of that control and that stability. And if you've never had to access any health service because you've had this relatively stable life, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what to do because there's nothing physically wrong with me. Knowing that 4 digits can get you to that someone that can help you go to that next stage is really quite remarkable. Hayley, you've got some questions.
I have, yes. So my first one is around sort of people ringing up. So I worked in Women's Aid for many years, and a lot of people don't want to acknowledge they're living in a domestic violence relationship, but they would be more inclined to recognise they have mental health issues. Do you have many who ring up with recognising the mental health issues, but then sort of disclose that there are other issues like domestic violence or alcohol or whatever the other sort of issues are, and then you have to kind of find that right referral option?
Yeah, we do get that. I don't want to say most days, because I think that would be a bit disingenuous, but yes, we do get that fairly often, where we get a call from, and it's not just females. We've had it from men as well, that haven't been able to identify that the situation they're living in would be deemed as sort of domestically violent.
Mm.
And then it's a case of discussion with that individual. Are they ready to sort of address that, or do they want to focus on their mental health first? Or sometimes we come to the end of a call and they're not entirely sure what they want right now, and it's a case of us being able to provide them with those resources and those tools. And I mean, they're always welcome to go away, think about it, and give us a call back, and we can go with what they're ready to do. One of the things we do a lot of is sending out lots of resources through email. Um, there's an absolute wealth of different mental health support out there, and it can be very overwhelming to get all that information thrown at you verbally. And I think sometimes it's often better to have that sort of in a written format. You can look at it as and when you feel able, scan through it, click on one link at a time, those sorts of things. Hope that
Yeah.
answers your question, Hayley.
Yeah, it does, because I just think it's quite nice sometimes. Somebody will ring up recognising that maybe it's they're struggling with their mental health, not wanting to admit that there's domestic violence, but knowing now that there's a door open. So even if they don't come back today or tomorrow or the day after or 3 months' time, but yet the door is still open, that's all they need to know sometimes. And when they're ready, they'll open that door themselves and step through it. That's a big, I think it's huge for people, because when you're ready, sometimes you just need to know what it's like, and then you need to go away and sort of digest that and then come back when it's time to take some action, because you're not always ready to take action.
Absolutely.
my other question was, there's a lot of charities, particularly across Carmarthenshire that I know of. I don't know many in Pembrokeshire, but I think there's probably a few that do support mental health. How would they become one of your kind of, I don't know if it's referrals or whether you just sort of offer that information? Is there a way of them becoming part of your resources to hand out?
Yeah, so we haven't got a formal process of it really. It's very informal, if I'm honest. So it's just a case of letting us know that you exist.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things that I do is I go to lots of sort of wellbeing events and lots of roadshows to try and get as much of the local knowledge as possible. We are a local service, so all of the staff are either living in or just working in Hywel Dda. So we're not sort of sitting in some ethereal office in the middle of Cardiff. We are local people. Um, and yeah, I try and get out to as many of those local events as I can to learn about what's out there, and it's a really good chance to network, get in touch with these other organisations that are out there, get a meeting in the diary, and get that information shared with the team. And quite often, what we'll do on the back of that is invite these people to come in and talk to the rest of the team in one of our sort of team meetings, which we have once a month. And from there, the team are better equipped to give that information out and to make sure we've got sort of advice for people in each area, because as I said, we cover the 3 counties of Hywel Dda, so Ceredigion, Pembrokeshire, and Carmarthenshire.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fab. Because I think this, again, we lack that cohesion. I think sometimes where there's organisations doing fantastic work, and yet nobody's communicating with each other to know that we're out there. So yeah, that's a fantastic information. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is that directory published anywhere, or is that something that you've got as a team? Because it is so vast, and I imagine it's ever changing with the different. Because there's varying sizes of organisations as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so we haven't got a held directory that we share publicly in any way, just because we haven't got the manpower to maintain that consistently for sort of public access. But one of the things that we do provide a lot of people with is the West Wales Action for Mental Health directory, which usually has much more than we've just got in house. They've got a dedicated team that look after it. And I believe they're based in Carmarthen as well, so it's all local sort of knowledge that's held there as well.
And so, is there anything else, Joe, that you think? Oh, actually, I need to mention this before I forget, or before we run out of time. And what other pinpoints do you want to get across?
I think we've covered most things, but I think it's sort of important to say really that we are one of the main things that we were set up to do was to be that new front door into mental health within the health board. So we know that people have always had issues being able to access mental health support, whether it's being able to get in to see your GP to get that referral. As you said earlier, Tom, just having the sort of courage sometimes to be able to make that appointment and walk in through the door can be just too much for some people. And if we can help those people that perhaps wouldn't have done that previously and are able to phone someone from home and have that conversation, start that conversation and get that referral into the most appropriate support, that's exactly what we were set up to do. And equally, I'm hoping that we can stop things getting worse by people not accessing support and needing to have those more intensive treatments and be able to intervene earlier.
Yeah, you can catch that spiral of overwhelm that I just mentioned before. But the message then for anyone that's feeling a little bit overwhelmed, if they've got those low-level symptoms, circumstantial symptoms, they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm headed. 111. Wait for the option 2, and you'll get through to a mental health practitioner who can listen first and foremost, and just help you try and collate those thoughts. This happened, then this happened, and then I haven't eaten and I can't drink, or whatever those symptoms might be, or you're just feeling bland and you're just feeling like there's no vibrancy left in your life, and you think, well, I'm just sat here. There doesn't have to be any extreme symptoms, does there, to impact your quality of life? And just being listened to and being provided a next step might be all that's needed before it gets to that crisis point. And even for those, Joe, you were saying that have got more of a clinical psychosis as well, it's also a gateway into the higher levels support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to encourage more sort of carers of those individuals to ring us as well, because we know that lots of times when people are experiencing that high level mental illness, they're not willing to reach out for support. So if we can help with getting them linked in, it's fantastic, really. We'll
Yeah,
do all we can to support.
I think it's brilliant, and as we mentioned at the beginning of talking with you, just making it accessible and making it something that's 4 digits. And for those watching on the screen, you'll see that 24/7 next to Joe's shoulder there, or next to his elbow. You can ring this number anytime you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Even on Christmas Day, believe it or not.
Even on Christmas Day, just like if my show falls on Christmas Day, you'll always have a breakfast show here on Pure West Radio on Christmas Day. Hayley, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just think it's fantastic. I would like to see more awareness raising now of this being available for people, because I think it is, as you said, being able to open that door, even if you're not ready to take action, being able to open that door today and say, I might need some help. Even if you're not ready to take action, that's okay as well. And it's going to be there forever. It's not something that's going to be taken away. So yes, we just need to get that information out there and let people know that it's available.
Absolutely. I'm trying to get out there as much as possible, so I'm hoping that this will definitely help.
Yeah.
I love that. Joe, thank you so much for your time here this evening. It's been really eye-opening, because it's been around for a little while now, but there are still some people that might not know that it exists. They just think of 111 if you got high fevers and colds, and I've really hurt my elbow, and where do I go, and what can help me? But that option 2, it really could be that moment that someone's vibrancy comes back. And provides that route path into the back to that mental stability I mentioned earlier. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Rachel, I think has been listening throughout the whole thing as well. If Joe has missed anything, let us know. Email studio@purestrato.com, and we'll make sure that we'll share that going forward. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the importance of taking a break, and also a national day for your birthday. What would it be? So, Joe, very quickly, taking a break. Hopefully, this is something that you're quite good at.
Yeah, I try my best.
And then, if you were to have a national day epitomise you, what would it be, Joe? You can start us off.
Oh, that's a very good. And I forgot to think about it when we were talking. I feel like I've been put on the spot, but I've had the better part of an hour to think about it, so I've got no excuse. But I've got to be honest, I'm going to steal Hayley's. It's got to be chocolate.
Chocolate as well?
You can borrow mine.
I love that. Here's a question, though. Hayley, what kind of chocolate for you?
Cadbury's.
Cadbury's classic. Joe?
Oh, I'm going to be controversial and say a bit of Galaxy.
Ooh, very, very nice. Stay tuned for my chocolate preference, because we're going to be talking about national days, and we're going to revisit chocolate very soon. It's always good to have these things in moderation, of course, unless it's Christmas. In which case it's breakfast, dinner, and lunch, and not in that order, unless it depends on the time you wake up. Joe, thank you so much. Do you take the calls as well? Is there one day that we might ever get on the phone with you?
Absolutely, as often as I can. I'm often tied up with meetings, but as much as I can, I try and get on the lines.
You'll be on the lines. And in fact, they're talking of these other support services for those that might be really struggling. Hayley, you've found out about the Samaritans and Samaritans Day, another phone line that you can talk to, where you might not know who you're speaking to, but again, it's that option to speak to someone. What's great about the NHS 111 option too is that it can put you in a clinical pathway should you need it as well. So Joe, thank you so much once again for joining us. One thing I haven't asked you is there a song that you want to play?
Oh, you really have put me on the spot.
I have now, and I appreciate that. So have a little ponder for like the 10 seconds or so, because Hayley, taking a break, I don't want to give too much away, but you're you're on a break whilst doing a radio show. You're as good as me at taking a break, Hayley.
But I enjoy this. This is the thing, isn't it? And this is just what's going to trip us up, okay? I hear this a lot. Yeah, but I enjoy it. But when you're doing it 24/7, that's not enjoyment. But yeah, taking a break, I think maybe it's about definition and defining what that means to you. But we're going to be looking at how you give yourself permission to completely take a break and what that looks like.
I like that. Joe, have you got a song?
Go on then. How about Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran?
Ah, what a brilliant tune. Bad Habits. He searches it here. He drags it in here. That is the song that we're going to listen to now. As selected by Joe, NHS 111 option 2. Joe, it's been a real privilege being able to shine a light on this relatively new service. And hopefully we'll be helping more and more people around the county who are feeling not themselves and from a low level and even more beyond that. Joe, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we've got Ed Sheeran, Bad Habits up for you next. Hayley and I are going to come straight back after that. We're going to be talking about the importance of taking a break and also national days. A little bit of fun to finish on. And I keep nearly forgetting, we're also going to be listening to Barry John from the VC Gallery. They held an exhibition in memory of the late Danny King a couple of weeks ago, and I caught up with them when they were there in St. Mary's Church. Joe, have a lovely evening. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.